And did you want to be part of that?
At which point I wanted to be a writer. You know, I mean, I used to write short stories for my school essays.
Yes.
But I think this whole thing about becoming a poet is also interesting, because there was never enough time to write a short story or a novel or anything. It somehow seemed easier to actually express yourself through poetry, because somehow you could write a line and then go off and write another line the next day. Novels seem to demand hours and hours and hours of time.
Well, that's an interesting discussion which poets in the audience might want to take up.
So writing was very much a part of what you did or who you are, reading and writing.
Did you, in writing this book, feel that you wanted to deal with certain social issues that were and are current in India itself? I mean, did you set out to write a socially conscious book?
Well, I feel that Indian writers have achieved a lot. You know, they are, as compared to Indian poets, for some reason, Indian novelists, huge name, but poets, you know, they haven't done that well. Having said that, with Indian fiction, I could not find a woman's sort of a long story about a woman's life, you know. A suitable boy, I mean, you can name any number of novels, you know. There seem to be male-dominated, focused. There are some new novels have come up, some new novels, sort of, you know, Manju Kapoor's Difficult Daughters and all that. But
Nayanthara Saga, Anita Desai,
life stories, but life stories and sort of crossing. I suppose they were more focused on India.
Yes.
And then, as the world got more global,
yes.
Well, you've got Meenakshi Mukherjee as well. So she's written about her experience in the US and all that. But anyway, I wanted to write things from a female point of view, and still the problems that you know still persist.
I'm going to open it up and see if there are any questions in the audience in a moment. But the last thing I wanted to ask you, it's very much a novel set in Orissa, and the characters, I imagine, for much of the time are speaking Oriya, not speaking English to each other, but obviously you convey it in English because it's an English language novel. But did you feel very conscious of this part of your inheritance when writing the book, that you were writing an Orissan book as well as an Indian novel?
I wanted to. It is a kind of a tribute to Orissa. Yes. I think it's a tribute, even though you might sort of question that. But the world is changing quite fast, and even children growing up today in Orissa might find this a bit strange. They might just say, well, was it like this? No, it wasn't.
Well, I said in my introductory remarks that it sort of almost invites a second book, because you read that bit at the end where she's waiting at the airport and she's going to fly out of India, and we sort of want to know what happens when she reaches Europe. But I wonder whether some people might read the novel and feel it ends on sort of almost on a dip. I mean, a lot of novels end on a high, and this one ends with her sort of pensively contemplating an uncertain future.
Well, the story of the novel is that it was written sort of going sort of in back and forth, including her life in Oxford. But because of the back and forth, I was asked that it might work better in terms of keeping the story and the momentum going, to straighten it. So I had written it, like an epic, so you begin in the middle and you go back and forth. Some people
I think you told me it was a lot longer in one version.
So it was almost, in this process of sort of, revising and making it became two novels, and I think the whole thing is probably three or four novels. So they're at least a trilogy, if not a.
So I was right to think that it invites another book.
Good. Definitely.
Can I ask? I've got a light shining in my face, but I hope I can see. Anyone like to ask anything of Shanta? Yes, there's a question right in front, and there's then another one there. So, Alan Brown, John, first. Perhaps if you,
I think there's one there.
Is there right there? Right, thank you.
Coming to the launch of what sounds like a fascinating first novel put me in mind of a first novel that I had for review 60 years ago, that being a first review, and it was by Ruth Prower Jabala. So it is appropriate this evening, and brings me to a question which I know could only be answered in a very, very quick and superficial way, and perhaps it's something to consider at greater length later, but listening to you and wondering about it, I wondered what you think about the question of going from, in Ruth Prower Jabala's case, going from her European background, and in her first novel, called something like To Whom She Will. Am I correct in that? Ruth Prower Jabala's first novel in 1954. She brought a freshness to her observations of Indian culture from European culture. You have come from Indian culture and settled in a Western culture, and you are going to bring the freshness of looking back from a perspective, a great sensitivity and humour and compassion and great accuracy of memory, I know, from the extracts you've read to us. Have you got any general reflections, which needn't be profound and searching for now, but something to set us thinking as we read the novel about this matter of going from one culture to another and getting a kind of tremendous impulse of delight in so doing?
Thank you.
For your
Thank you,
fiction.
Adam.
And also, I hope, I mean, I can't resist saying that first novel of Ruth Prower Jabala's led to an extraordinary succession of wonderful fictions. I don't say that you're going to end up in films, but I wouldn't mind.
On that very, very last note, Alan, I should say that in a little email exchange, we did actually talk about the way in which this particular novel would lend itself to being filmed.
Yes, and for that you need powerful people to do all these things. So I'm sure all my supporters here will help. Regarding your very specific earlier question, this first book is very specifically to do with Orissa. So what you want to see will appear in the second novel, because she does arrive fresh from India with a very different worldview. Arrives in Oxford, and the thing is that she sort of thinks for herself, like, I think everybody does, it's not, Asha is maybe more sensitive and more, but like anybody who would have arrived, or even if you go to India even today for the first time, even your own reactions would be quite extraordinary.
But putting the question in a slightly different way, do you think the fact that you substantially wrote it while in this country gave you an objectivity about describing India and the growing up there and the marriage and so on, which you might not have had if you'd written it in India?
In India. I couldn't have written this novel in India.
Right.
And that's what we were talking about earlier.
Yes. And I think I saw a question there. Yes. Do you mind standing up to me?
No, it's actually not so much a question, it's just a comment.
There's a microphone coming, so that might be helpful.
Sorry. It's not so much a question as a comment. I happen to have been somebody who's been lucky enough to read this slightly ahead of the crowd. And everyone has been here, perhaps British understatement is coming to the fore, but the power of the writing in the second half of the novel is sensational. It is so hard-hitting and so shocking and so astonishingly in contrast to the sort of gentle social history at the beginning, that I would urge you all, chapter 10 onwards, do not just think this is just a gentle novel that we can put up and put down. This is something you will remember, and it's topical for women in India and the world over. I'm not a feminist at all, but the strength of the writing is something you must really look for, because it's quite astonishing. That's all.
Well, thank you very much. I'm sorry to hear you're not a feminist. I think that's a pity. But it's, as I tried to convey, it's a book with a sort of slow burn effect, and it's at the beginning appears to be a story about a young girl growing up, and I won't say we've read that before, but I mean, because, as you say, there haven't been so many books written exactly about that, but it explodes into a different kind of life when the scenes of sexual violence and so on take place.